Let's jump right into this. We are about to unpack one of the most legendary villains in all of literary history. In this explainer, we're taking a chronological dive into the true canonical history of Sauron. We'll be pulling directly from J.R.R. Tolkien's original writings to see exactly who this Dark Lord really was, beyond the heavy armor and the ominous shadow. Now, if you have only seen the Peter Jackson films, you probably picture Sauron solely as this giant, terrifying, flaming eyes suspended over Mordor. But in Tolkien's original lore, he actually had physical forms, which brings us to a really massive question. How did an angelic spirit of order become Middle-earth's ultimate symbol of evil? I mean, he wasn't always a Dark Lord. Actually, he started out as something entirely pure. This contrast brilliantly illustrates his tragic fall. Originally, he was known as Mairon, which literally translates to the admirable. He was this being of pure light, a masterful smith who studied directly under the gods of this world, the Valar. But when he aligned himself with darkness, he completely dropped that identity and became known as Sauron, meaning the abominable. It's a huge shift. But to really wrap our heads around this transition, we first need to understand exactly what kind of being he was. So let's look at his species. Sauron was a Maia. A Maia is basically an immortal, angelic spirit. They were created by the supreme deity, a LOTR, before the physical universe even existed. Put that into perspective, Sauron is literally older than Middle-earth itself. They descended to Arda to help shape the world. Now, wizards like Gandalf and Saruman, they were also Maiar, but it's super important to note that Sauron was actually a far higher, vastly more powerful being than the wizard who showed up in Middle-earth way later. The psychology behind his corruption is just fascinating. Sauron didn't just wake up one day and decide, hey, I'm going to be evil. As a craftsman, he loved efficiency. Honestly, you could almost think of him as the ultimate toxic micromanager. That intense love for order mutated into an obsession and a deep, deep hatred of chaos. He realized that Melkor, also known as Morgoth, the first and absolute greatest Dark Lord, had the power to actually make plans happen efficiently. So Sauron allied with him, valuing absolute control over the freedom of living things. This master plan unfolded across the distinct ages of Middle-earth. First age, commander of Angband. Second age, forging the rings. Third age, the necromancer. In the first age, he served as Morgoth's top lieutenant and the commander of the fortress of Angband. In the second age, after Morgoth was defeated and cast into the void, Sauron hid, eventually returning to forge the rings of power. And finally, in the third age, he returned as the shadowy necromancer, before openly declaring himself the Dark Lord once again. But throughout all these ages, he didn't just look like some giant brute in black armor. His shape-shifting abilities were absolutely incredible. During his height in the First Age, he took the form of a towering man radiating this terrifying aura. But get this, he also shape-shifted into a giant werewolf, and even a massive vampire bat just to escape defeat. He could manipulate his physical form entirely to suit whatever he needed, which leads us directly into his most devastating disguise. After lying low for hundreds of years, Sauron resurfaced in the Second Age using a totally new, fair appearance. He called himself Annatar, the Lord of Gifts. He used this incredibly charismatic, beautiful form to infiltrate the elven realm of Eregion. There, he actually befriended the brilliant elven smith Celebrimbor. He pretended to be an emissary of the Valar, offering to share his incredible knowledge of craftsmanship to help the elves preserve the beauty of Middle-earth. Talk about a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? And this brings us to his ultimate strategy, which unfolded in 3 highly calculated phases. First, as Annatar, he taught the elves advanced ringcraft. Second, he helped them create rings of power, fully knowing these rings would bind the wearer's powers and works. And third, the trap. He secretly forged the one ring in the fires of Mount Doom. This single ring was designed with dark magic to control all the other rings, allowing him to perceive and literally govern the very thoughts of those who wore them. Now, to make this ring powerful enough to dominate all the others, Sauron had to pour a huge amount of his own inherent former power directly into the gold. He inscribed it with the legendary Black Speech. Ash Nazg Durba Tuluk, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. It gives you chills just thinking about it. But there was a major catch he didn't anticipate. As soon as Sauron placed the one ring on his finger, his entire deception failed. The elves were incredibly powerful beings themselves, and the moment he tried to dominate their minds, they perceived his treachery. They instantly took off their rings, quickly hiding the three most powerful elven rings away from him. Furious that his super stealthy plan failed, Sauron just dropped the disguise and declared open, ruthless war on the elves. He sacked Erugion and violently tortured Celebrimbor just to reclaim the other rings. So what exactly happened to the rings he stole back? Well, 3 elven rings were hidden away. 7 dwarven rings resisted his domination, and 9 rings corrupted men into the Nazgûl. He distributed them to the other races, you see. The elven rings remained untouched by his evil. He gave 7 to the dwarven lords, but dwarves are notoriously stubborn. Their minds completely resisted his domination, though the magic did make them intensely greedy. But the 9 rings given to men? Yeah, men proved by far the easiest to sway. Those 9 kings were completely corrupted, fading into the terrifying Nazgûl, Sauron's most fearsome and deadly servants. From there, Sauron's power grew exponentially. He built his massive fortress Barad-dûr in Mordor and gathered huge armies of orcs, trolls, and corrupted men. Recognizing that Sauron would literally conquer all of Middle-earth if left unchecked, the Free Peoples took a united stand. The last alliance of elves and men was formed, led by the elven king Gil-galad and the human king Elendil. Together, they pushed Sauron's forces back into Mordor and laid a grueling 7-year siege to his dark tower. Finally, after 7 years, Sauron was forced to come out and fight face to face. He actually killed both Elendil and Gil-galad, but then Elendil's son, Isildur, took up his father's broken sword and cut the One Ring straight from Sauron's hand. Because Sauron had poured so much of his own life force into the ring, losing it instantly destroyed his physical body. But here is the absolutely crucial detail. His spirit survived. It fled back into Mordor to hide in the shadows. So Sauron was defeated, right? But not utterly destroyed. Why? Because of Isildur's fatal mistake, claiming the ring instead of destroying it in Mount Doom. Isildur had the immediate opportunity to cast the ring right into the fires, which would have ended Sauron forever. But the ring's corrupting influence took hold instantly. He claimed it for himself. Just 2 years later, Isildur was ambushed and killed by orcs, and the ring slipped from his finger, lost in the depths of the river Anduin. Because the ring survived, Sauron's anchor to the world remained intact. For over 2,000 years, the ring just lay hidden, and Sauron slowly gathered his strength as a disembodied spirit. Moving into the Third Age, we see the return of the Necromancer. He came back to a fortress called Dol Guldur, known only as the Necromancer. He was weak, shadowy, but always plotting his eventual return to Mordor. And in a wild twist of dramatic irony, around this exact same time, the Lost Ring was finally found by a completely unassuming creature, a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins. Decades later, in the year 3018, the wizard Gandalf identifies the One Ring, sparking the desperate quest to destroy it. He confirms that the magic ring Bilbo passed down to his nephew Frodo is, in fact, Sauron's ring. Through the torture of the creature Gollum, Sauron learns that Baggins has it. This kicks off the events of The Lord of the Rings. Sauron is now desperately hunting for it. He's absolutely terrified that a powerful figure, like Gandalf or Aragorn, the heir of Isildur, might claim the ring and use it against him. Because if he regains it first, he will have the power to cast a second darkness over all of Middle-earth. So the Council of Elrond decides the only path forward is a secret quest to sneak into Mordor and destroy the ring. Which brings us to a really fascinating question. Why did Sauron never see his defeat coming? I mean, for a being of such supreme, calculating intelligence, a master strategist who manipulated entire kingdoms, how did he fail so spectacularly to anticipate the Fellowship's plan? It all comes down to a fatal psychological blind spot. Sauron assumed everyone lusted for power to rule in the exact same way he did. He fully expected that whoever had the ring would use it to raise a massive army and challenge him directly in war, to overthrow him and take his place. He was actively preparing for a huge military confrontation, keeping his eye locked on the great lords of the West. And this brilliantly illustrates his ultimate downfall. He was entirely blind to the idea of destroying power. Because he was so obsessed with absolute control, he literally could not comprehend the concept of humility. The thought that anyone would willingly take the ultimate weapon, sneak it into his own land, and willingly cast it into a volcano to destroy it, it was a concept so foreign to his nature that it never even crossed his mind until the very second the ring was on the edge of the fire. It's the embodiment of tyranny destroyed by humility. Sauron's legacy defines the entire narrative of The Lord of the Rings. He is the ultimate embodiment of tyranny, a tragic cosmic being whose desperate need for order turned him into an absolute monster. He poured his soul into an object of domination, and in the end, he was outsmarted not by great warriors or massive armies, but by the smallest, most humble creatures in Middle-earth, the hobbits, who chose to let power go rather than wield it. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to consider. Is true evil born from pure chaos? Or, as in the case of Mairon the Admirable, is it born from an obsession with absolute control? It kind of changes the way you look at power entirely, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helped clarify the incredible depths of Tolkien's greatest villain. Until next time, keep learning and keep asking questions.